great advocate for us, but as a friend. Please welcome Paul Begala.
My friend, my delegate, once, and now I am so happy to be in Bob Brink's district, and Senator Begala's district as well. I am well represented in Richmond. Yes, thank goodness. There was that little brief period, Kathleen, where I was suffering under Barbara Comstock. I do hope you'll have a chance to right that wrong. It's all said, Kathleen. Brian, like you, I've been coaching for, I've been thinking about this, here in Northern Virginia, coaching my kids for 15 years. We got 4 boys, Johnny, Billy, Charlie, Patrick, and they are 20. So he's at William & Mary now. And then Billy is 17, and Charlie is 15, and Patrick is 12. He's the youngest. He's my 6th grader. During the program, and I was not trying to be rude, when Brian was speaking, I was checking my BlackBerry because my wife, Diane, was at Patrick's Little League game. And I'm happy to say Patrick Begala hit a double to the fence, drove in 3 runs, and we're winning. And it called to mind when you were saying that one of the most powerful experiences I ever had as a coach, and it was this. I had this kid who was my son Johnny's age, so he's now 20. But back then he was 8. And I was coaching John, and one of our neighbor's boys was on the team too. And this kid, my son's really tall. You can't get it from me. It's genetic engineering. I'm very, very tall, beautiful woman. So my kids are, thank God, tall and beautiful. But so this kid was not quite as tall as my son. And I put him in as a guard, really fast. And even in practice, he was one of these kids, diving for loose balls, eating the parquet on the floor, just the most driven, relentless kid. And I did not have to ask where it came from, because I had known his father, Terry McCullough, for 25 years. Let me tell you, no bet against Jack McCullough, who is today the best rugby player at the Naval Academy.
Oh my God.
And wants to be a Navy SEAL. This is the kind of values that our friend Terry has. And I say that because that's the kind of intensity it's going to have to take this year. Okay, we're all going to have to play like Jack McCullough played when he was 8 years old. Seriously, we have to die for every loose ball. We're going to have to, Jack was not afraid to throw a few elbows. The boys are bigger than him. Okay, we may have to do that. It'll be clean, it'll be fine, but we're going to have to fight if we want to win. This is a great old story about the guy who, his son went off on an exchange trip to Japan. And they took the kid to a sumo match, because that's like the embodiment of their culture. It was a lovely thing. The kid learned so much, and he came back and said, Father, they have this wonderful ritual before the matches, where they bow to all 4 sides of the arena to show respect for everyone. They throw, I think, salt or sand. Salt? Let me know. Rice? Salt. To I don't know why, to evoke certain spirits. They have all this ritual. So, the Japanese kid comes to visit America to reciprocate. And the parents here say, well, we'll take him to a boxing match. Kind of emblematic of our culture. And the kid's very receptive, though, and he says, why is it that there's that man with the bow tie? He said, well, son, that's a referee, and that's to show that this is still civilized and dignified, and that there are certain rules. Oh, okay. Okay, and he said, and why do they kind of touch gloves before they begin? He said, well, it's kind of shaking hands. It's a way to, again, show some sort of respect for your adversary, before you start hitting him. It's like, okay, and then they go to their quarters, and one of the guys, right before the fight begins, does this. And the Japanese kid says, well, what does that mean? And the dad says, it don't mean a damn thing if you don't know how to fight. And I say that as a faithful Catholic. We need to know how to fight. Okay, that's the kind of election this is going to be. I don't need to tell you the stakes. You all have all talked about it. Our chairwoman has already told us. This group was absolutely instrumental. Not only to turning Virginia blue, that is fine, but for putting us in the black. Right? For making this the sort of state that can produce a governor, and now senator like Mark Warner, and then another one like Tim Kaine, that can produce the kind of surpluses that we have the kind of business climate that we had, the kind of growth that we had, the kind of jobs that we had, the kind of schools that we had, so we could have all those high ratings. And our Republican friends and neighbors, they inherited all that from you, from us, from Virginia Democrats. They inherited all of it, and you know what they've done? They squandered it. It's really got to be frustrating for all of you who've toiled in the vineyards all of these years, all of us who have lived here and came to be here for a reason, for the very kind of business climate, educational climate, and cultural climate, and opportunity that Virginia has represented these last 10 years that DemBiz has been in business. And then to see them all squandering it. And I have to say, I was shocked because I thought if Republicans would be good at anything, it'd be inheriting things. But no! They squandered the whole thing. And so now it's our job once again to come in and clean up after it. And it is really, Marcus, right, I grew up in Texas, where we have this saying at my school, the University of Texas: the eyes of Texas are upon you. Well, guess what? The eyes of the whole world are upon you. The entire nation, and really the whole free world, is going to be looking at Virginia. This is the only showing down. This is the most important thing going on in the political universe. Jerry Conley's right. This is the epicenter of all things political. And not only because it's the one contested race, and not only because it's near enough for the Beltway media to drive across the river and come and watch us. Because the choice is so clear. That's why. And in Texas, we have a terrible public school system, and so I use phrases like this: I've been knowing Terry for 27 years. And I have. I've known him all my adult life. We started out in this thing together, and we've been in more fights together, and so I can speak from deep personal knowledge about the kind of person he is. Now, I'd say I do not know his opponent, but I hope I get a lot of time to meet him when he retires the private sector. I know I had a public school education in Texas, but I can't read. And I don't think I've ever seen a more clear choice. Ever. And yes, it's true that I love my friend Terry, and he's just the most wonderful guy, and I think I'm talking about that in a minute. But the choice is so extraordinary. And what I think it really comes down to is that all of us who invested our lives here, all of us who are raising our children here, all of us who hope our children can stay here, we need a champion like Terry who can extend the kind of Warner, Kane, DemBiz policies that make this Commonwealth at the forefront. Economically, educationally, and yes, politically. I have to say, 20 years ago when I was working for Bill Clinton, we carried Louisiana, Arkansas and Tennessee, okay, Clinton and Gore were on the ticket, but we carried Louisiana, we carried Georgia, we carried Florida, we carried lots of southern states. And we didn't even come close to Virginia. They were hunting us down with dogs. Okay, those were bad times here. It was tough. So I know. And I was already living in Virginia. I moved to this state right after I got married. It was 1989. And so I've seen this development. And I remember what it was like in the bad old days. Before we had a Mark Warner, before we had a Tim Kaine, before we had a Jim Webb, before we had a DemBiz. Right? We all remember those days of what it was like. And I do not want to go back to those days. What you all have produced with this organization, and then the leaders you have put forward to run this state, is remarkable. And now contrast yourselves and ourselves with the rest of our brother and sister states in the South, and we stand head and shoulders above them all. We do. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here. That is why Terry is running. You know that, and he could use meaningful work for once in his life. And he'll be the first to tell you, he's made a lot of investments in his life. Some of them smart, some of them not so smart. The smartest he ever made was coming here 21 years ago to stake his life and his future and his children. Say again?
Dorothy was his best.
Oh, I'm getting her, don't worry. She ain't getting off scot-free here. Dorothy is very nearly perfect, but she has abysmal taste in men. But they are some of our best friends, but they have the exact kind of things, and we don't need to worry about that. Those of us who know them, okay, but we have to tell the rest of the state. You know, we have to reach out. And I don't need to tell you the whole rest of the state ain't like this room. Right? I mean, I grew up in Fort Bend County, Texas, Sugar Land, Texas. My congressman was Tom DeLay. Yes, 22 years with Tom DeLay. And I would go home and go see all my brothers and my redneck friends and all the guys I grew up with, and I'd say, I kind of feel it out, because I thought, finally, at some point, he's going to run out the string. And how is DeLay doing? I swear to you, this is what they would say, not bad for a liberal. Okay, so I understand, believe me. And in fact, we have a farm, my wife and I and our boys, 100 miles from here in Mount Jackson, Shenandoah County. Okay, those people are my neighbors and they're my friends, and they all fly the Confederate flag. They're not racist and not evil people. They fly that damn Confederate flag. They like me now because one of our horses, I am not stupid, is this old gray gelding who we changed his name to Trout. Those in school Virginia history know that was the name of Robert E. Lee's horse. Oh, you're not so bad now. We can't win there. We can't win this state. But we have to find ways to connect with them as well. And what that means is showing that we actually come from a common culture and we have common goals. Terry can do that because he has lived the very dream that they want their children to live. And he can put into practice the kind of values and policies that will help them do that. And I know what Mr. Cuccinelli is going to try to do. He's going to try to divide and distract and then destroy. These are the 3 Ds of the Cuccinelli campaign. Believe me, we will see this, right? And they're already trying. We saw it today. Jerry and Jim talked about it in the United States Senate today. I am so proud that my 2 senators and your 2 senators from Virginia stood up today for common sense background checks. And so does Terry, and so do all of us. But this is one of these things they use to divide us against each other, so then we forget our common purpose together. Right? And so this is what I always say to my neighbors. I have 17 guns, by the way. I have 4 boys with 17 guns. I would have a lot more bullets than my wife would let me. But so I'm kind of a left-wing gun nut. But by the way, I bought all 17 of them after I helped Bill Clinton pass the Brady bill with a background check. And it seems to me preposterous today that we are simultaneously making two bills we're debating. One that says you have to wait 13 years to become a citizen, and another that says you shouldn't even have to wait 3 days to buy a assault weapon. Right. Holy moly, what is going on in this country? We cannot let them divide us on this. And this is what I tell all my neighbors on the farm. You know, they see us out there, we target, we blow stuff up all the time. It's great, I love it. And we'll shoot varmints and groundhogs and all this. And one of my neighbors is coming over. We're sitting around drinking beer, and he says, you know, you got guns, and you like to hunt. And while, you know, Obama, he wants to take away my gun. I said, no, he doesn't. And they'll say this about Terry. I said, I can promise you, President Obama does not want to take your gun. He's got lots of guys with guns. He doesn't need any more. And he said, now how do I know for sure? And I said, well, here's how I know for sure. If we put in place any more of these Republican economic policies, you're going to need that gun to shoot a squirrel to feed your children. They don't have economic policy they have. We can reach those folks. And I know Terry, and he can reach those folks. Believe me. I know them. They're my friends and neighbors, and then so is Terry up here. He can make that case to them. And here's why. All of these issues together, they really come down, in one sense, because you're business people, you know this. It's essentially just a business plan, right? Right? Who's going to actually move the state in the direction that we want? Imagine going on an economic development trip to Berlin, or New York, or Brazil, or anywhere, and you're trying to lure jobs here in Virginia, right? And you show them the brochure, and it says, Virginia is for transvaginal ultrasounds. No. Are they going to move here? Right? Virginia is for suing and investigating a UVA professor who dares study the effects of pollution. Are they going to come here for that? Are they going to say, well, gee, Martha, this is the place I want to raise my kids? Right? Divisive social issues do not move us forward. They do not pull us together, and they do not move us forward. But that will be the agenda that we get with Ken. And it will, you know this, it will reverse all the gains that we've made. And it will cripple our ability to move forward together into the next century. And meanwhile, on the other side, I can see Terry making the case. You all know him, right? He's the best damn salesman I've ever seen. He could sell shit to the zoo. He could. In fact, the truck up, I'm on board. He will go over there, and he's not going to tell them about how we hate each other in Virginia, and about how we point fingers at each other in Virginia, or how we judge each other in Virginia based on who we happen to fall in love with. As I say, Terry has a wife who is the worst tasting man I've ever seen in my life. He's not going to pass judgment on anybody else's taste who they fall in love with. He will be able to make the case. Come here. Bring your jobs here. You might even be able to get from home to work. Strange idea. Your children might actually be able to go to a good school. They might be able to go to a university where the professor is not under indictment for investigation for studying pollution. Right? He will unite this state and then take that unity and move us into the future. I am so confident about that. Because really, all of those ideas and policies, all of that business plan, you know this because you're business people. What it really is, it's a culture. It's a set of values. That's what it is. Every one of you who has built a business, you know that. I mean, me, Carl and I started out 28 years ago with just him and me. Guess what? 28 years later, it's just him and me. So, I'm not a businessman. But I do understand about values and about culture. And the best operations, the best businesses, the best, I know, the best political campaigns, the best White Houses are one in which there is a culture that is then enunciated in policy. Right? You have to start with culture. And I know the values of Virginia Democrats. I know the values of DemDiz. I know the values of Terry and his family. I really do. As I say, I coached a boy. By the way, more importantly, probably, is my wife Diane teaches their Sally at Sunday school. So I understand that, and I can tell you, this is the lesson that they're raising their children with. This is how they've raised their five. This is how we're trying to raise our four. I guarantee you're raising your own kids this way. What was, and I'm sorry to get into Sunday school mode here, but what was the first question, the very first question ever asked in all of recorded history? You know what it was? It was when Cain slew Abel in a jealous rage. Right? They had Adam and Eve had two boys, Cain and Abel. They each offered sacrifice to God. Right? And Cain offered I have to make sure this is right. One was a farmer, one was a rancher. Cain offered the sheep. One offered, anyway, Cain offered the fruits of his field. Abel offered a goat. Right? So it was a living sacrifice versus a farming sacrifice. And believing that God preferred Abel's sacrifice, Cain, in a jealous rage, picked up a rock and hit his brother over the head and killed him. It's the first crime, the first murder in human history. And the way we're teaching our children, I know my wife does this better in Sunday school. God, who knows everything, knew that Cain had killed his brother. But instead of saying, you killed your brother, you're in trouble, he wanted to elicit a spark of conscience in humanity. And so God asked, instead of told, where is your brother? Right? And we know what Cain said. Cain turned to God Almighty. That's the first question any human being ever asked. Am I my brother's keeper? Terry and Dorothy are raising those five to answer that question. You bet you are. You are your brother's keeper. You are your sister's keeper. You are your neighbor's keeper. This is what makes us a community. And this I know from 27 years of being one of his closest friends. This is how they are raising their own children. These are the values he will bring to us. And you cannot have those values and then turn and divide Virginians against each other. You cannot have those values and then hate on some of us because we happen to love somebody you don't approve of. You cannot have those values and then turn and try to close, as our chairwoman said, every single women's health clinic in the state of Virginia. You cannot have those values and do the sorts of things that our friends on the other side want to do. That's how important this election is. That's how high these stakes are. And that is, I think, the message we need to take to people. Because this thing is going to go one way or the other. I'm telling you. We're either going to be Virginia or you're going to be like my beloved Texas. You go back here. Okay? We've had Rick Perry. And before that, George W. We lead, you know, Virginia we've had since we've lived here, right? We've had Warner and Kane and some really impressive governors. Right? In Texas, we've had Bush and Perry for like the last 16 years. We lead the NCAA in underachieving governors. And you thought Bush was dumb. Harry's the guy for everybody who thought Bush was okay, but just a little too cerebral. I'm sorry, but it's true. And the whole set, my nieces and nephews in there, I love my state, I do, but I live here for a reason, right? Because this state has taken a different path. Instead of denigrating public education, instead of, in Texas, they're already trying, my nephews and my nieces, they're teaching them creationism. How fast is that going to come in a Governor Cuccinelli administration? Right? They're going to say, we're not going to, this is the county that invented the internet. And we're going to all of a sudden try to tell children that creationism is now the way? So we're not going to believe in evolution or gravity or photosynthesis or electromagnetism or all that spooky science stuff going right out the window. I have seen this. And you have seen it. If you look at the rest of these states, and states that we won in 1992 and have slowly slipped back away because they have turned against each other within their borders. They've turned to hating and dividing and judging and forgetting that this is really all about coming together and moving forward. That's what's made this state so different. And that's why you look around this room. How many of us have either are yourself were born in another country or your parents or grandparents came? Including, they're not here anymore, including the women and men who waited on us. Is there any more left? No. Right? Again, show me your hands again. Right? And we came here for a reason. Or our parents did, or our grandparents did. And by the way, within the country, people like me, people like Macker, decades ago came here for a reason, to Virginia, within our country. Right? Because, you all know why. Because we wanted opportunity. That's all we wanted. We just wanted a fair shot. And this story is repeated 1,000,000 times a day in this Commonwealth. But it's not etched in stone. You know, you all have lived this dream. That's why you're here. And I guarantee you, everybody who had a hand up, your parents, your grandparents probably weren't hanging out in rooms like this. You know, my grandmother, in my case, my grandmother was a maid. She came over from the old country. She got the only job. She never went to high school, never finished more than like 4th grade. But got the only job she could get, which was a maid. She was proud to do it. And she worked for wealthy families and wiped their little babies' bodies and was proud to do it because they were too good to do it. But you know, she didn't stay there because she came to freedom. And so she got on with the phone company. And she met an electrician at that phone company who also never even went to high school. But he could get a decent living. She could work hard. They could earn a decent living, and they could live this dream. They bought their own home. They sent my daddy, their son, to college. He became a businessman. He was a salesman. He was a business person, wore a suit and tie every day. And she lived, my grandmother did, long enough to see not only my daddy go to college and live the American dream, and then she saw her grandson go to law school and then wind up an advisor to the President of the United States of America in one human lifetime, just like that. Because of me. This thing frustrates the hell out of me with my Republican friends. They believe in the myth of the self-made man or the self-made woman. No. I prefer President Clinton's analogy to this. He says, if you ever see a turtle on a fence post, you know one thing. He didn't get there on his own. Somebody had to put him there. That is the difference. Right? I know how I got here. Terry McAuliffe knows how he got here. He started at age 14, started his first business at age 14, paving his neighbor's driveways. Right? And then actually wound up paving roads when he was just a boy. That's the kind of entrepreneurial spirit. But he would be the first one to tell you that all of that success that he has had is because of the people who came before him and the system into which he was dropped. Right? Any one of us who've been successful, you put us in a different country. Why is it that in one human lifetime, my grandmother moved farther than 500 years? They were peasants in Hungary. And they didn't move an inch for centuries. Not because they didn't work hard. My grandmother worked her heart out. But they worked just as hard, I'm quite sure. But there was no system that would reward that. They were not in a place that had opportunity. And let me tell you, if we go back to the kind of country that says we're not going to take a risk, you know, on an uneducated immigrant maid, or we're not going to take a risk on a skinny guy with a funny name whose grandfather was a goat herder in Kenya, you know, we'll be squandering our greatest resources. Because let me tell you, they're all here in this room, they're in this Commonwealth. The question is, will we develop them the way Virginia has, and frankly, the way some of our brother and sister states have not, the way America always has, but I fear sometimes we're turning away from, or will we continue to move forward? We have the template. This is why the whole world is going to look at us. We've gotten this right in our party, in our Commonwealth. And the question is, can we get our fellow Virginians of all types to join in this common effort to move us forward one more time? I'm betting yes, because I've seen what you all have done in just 10 years. And for that, I thank you. God bless you. Thank you.